everyone. Hello. Welcome to our very first Fellows reading. Kicking us off this morning, we're going to have a selection from Lillian Lee. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming here at 9 a.m. I hope you're having your cups of coffee. I'm having mine right over there. So the funny thing is that I'm pretty sure I was in this room just over 10 years ago when I was here at the Sewanee Young Writers Conference at 16 years old. In that summer, I gave the first reading of my entire life. And I'm 90% sure this room, this podium. So in honor of that, I wanted to do something totally new today, which is to read something brand new at today's reading. I've always read something polished that I knew was going to most likely work, but not today. You're very kind. So to borrow Tim O'Brien's amazing term, I'm going to be reading from my maybe book, maybe novel. I don't know anything about it, except that it's about a group of friends who grew up in this Chinese-American enclave in Maryland, and they have reunited with a girl from their past. And they've all just recently graduated from college. They're all unemployed because it's during the recession of '08. I hadn't expected Grace to be so nervous in the car ride over. "Won't they be upset?" she asked. "I don't want to intrude on some childhood tradition." I said, "Grace, eating at the California Pizza Kitchen is not a childhood tradition." I said, "You're the guest of honor. They're all so excited to see you again." Grace had grown up in the same neighborhood as the rest of us, benefiting from the mysterious migration patterns that had brought a small town's worth of Chinese families to roost in Gaithersburg, Maryland, but I hadn't seen her since we were 11, just over a decade ago. We'd been reunited last month when my mother had sidled up to me at our New Year's party and said, "You remember Grace." Seeing her again was like happening upon the site of my own shipwrecked memories. The next week, when I relayed our chance meeting to Justin, Errol, and Vivian, they demanded I bring her to them. We'd spent the rest of the day reminiscing. Grace's name had once been the most hated word in our vocabulary, and the intensity of our childhood antipathy now delivered us the flotsam of our former selves. Lincoln Elementary during the week, and Anhua Chinese School on Saturday mornings, after-school math in a rented rec room, on the piano bench with Elena, the Russian, who taped rulers to our wrists, and on the courts of the community tennis club, where a former pro served aces at our heads. We had forgotten how early and obviously our parents had separated us from the other children, bumping us onto an advancement track they made out of overlapping classrooms, competition the backbone of the community. We hadn't had to think about the blood sport of report card days until Grace reappeared, the very symbol our parents had used against us when we misbehaved. She was the one who'd gone the farthest, prep school, Princeton, and while our parents had hoped for the opposite, for a few years, Grace had been a flashlight, shining through the holes in the old way and forward to a bright new path to success. But none of those early achievements had saved Grace from the same fatal post-grad unemployment that had swallowed us all. We had heard she might be in the middle of a breakdown. We were looking forward to finding out. Now, with the flesh and blood person chewing her bottom lip beside me, I felt guilty, holding that double knowledge in my head. "I don't know if I remember them," Grace said. "Can you describe them?" And in any other circumstance, I would have looked at her as if she'd asked me to describe my own feet. I'd known Justin, Errol, and Vivian for so long that I barely thought of them as my friends. They were the established facts of my life. But knowing the intentions of tonight, I obliged and may have even overcompensated. I only wanted to give her enough dirt that she might build herself in even ground. I said, "Do you remember Justin showing up in our classroom in 4th grade, wearing that oversized Mickey Mouse t-shirt? So obviously fresh off the boat." Of course, we hadn't used that term back then because it hadn't yet been used on us. Well, in college, he started weightlifting, And when he got passed over by every consulting firm he'd spent the last 4 job fairs wooing, he got even more enormous. He made an Instagram of what he called his gains. I follow it so I can make fun of the squat videos. I told Grace that Vivian was still Asian girl basic. Did she remember the Pokemon stickers and rolling backpack in elementary school, the orange streak highlights in middle school? In high school, Vivian had upgraded to coach wristlets and digital perms, and to make it clear she was spoiled rotten, her parents threw her a big birthday party every year, renting out a movie theater or a bowling alley, which inevitably sent our parents on a tear about how vulgar it was to spend that much money on a child. You won't believe this, I said, but Vivian is dating Errol. She's the reason he's not in San Francisco on a Google shuttle right now, and I'm still mad about that. We'd all thought Errol was crazy when he quit the Google gig and moved back to Maryland, until we heard that Vivian had decided long distance didn't work for her. Then we still thought he was crazy, but at least we knew why. It's awful, I continued. Errol was our whiz kid. He was the one so smart, he was basically stupid. The only kid I knew who worked hard just on the classes he cared about. And if you needed a distraction on report card day, you just called Errol over and asked to see his. Was he real thin? Grace asked. Like a wild animal, I said. And he used to wear Adidas sandals all year round. When Vivian had started dating him in college, she'd gotten him into boat shoes and silk blend button-downs, and now Errol looked like he could work on Wall Street, except that his shaggy hair showed every impression the pillow made on it the night before. We hadn't thought they'd last past senior year. I said, look, Vivian will be glad you're here, because then I can't be as bitchy as I want to be. And Justin will be excited to flirt with someone who didn't know him in all his preteen puniness. What about Errol? Errol's in his own world. Grace tensed up again as I pulled into the mall parking lot. We'd hung out a few times already, and she always acted like a guest in someone else's house. She wouldn't say if she was cold or hot or tired or hungry or needed to pee. Even my mother's dog whined if it wanted to go outside. Instead, her face spoke for her, and I answered, trust me, we're sick of each other by now. And then, because some people just need to be given a rock and told it's lucky, I gave Grace the packet of Pepsid in my bag and said, Vivian never brings her own. She'll love you if you spot her one. Does she have bad heartburn? Grace asked. And I said, what? I thought she was joking at first. It's for the flush, I said, more patiently. You know, so when you drink, you don't turn red? Grace said, that's fucking magic. And I wondered, for the first time, if Grace was as fascinated with us as we were with her. Everyone was already seated by the time we arrived. They'd gotten their drink orders in 2 and frosty glasses of light beer stood guard over the table. I brought Grace, I said. I went around the table, grabbing the boys around their necks and pressing my cheek against Vivian's. I wished I could whisper, behave, in their ears. Justin stood to give Grace a hug. He was chivalrous, but he also liked to show off. Grace blinked like she'd never seen someone that bulked out before. Don't squeeze too hard, she said, and everyone laughed. When Grace took her seat, Vivian put an arm around her and rubbed her shoulder. Welcome back, Errol said, bobbing his head across the table like the boy genius turkey he was. Maybe we'd been cruel, lobbying for front row seats to our old friend's downfall, but in the actual moment, we showed ourselves to be better than the children we'd once been. We may have been trained by all the potluck parties we've been dragged to as kids, our only refuge a huddle of other unfamiliar children, ranging from 5 to 15 years old. Those countless nights crowded around somebody else's Game Boy Color had taught us, implicitly, to get along with anyone whom our parents might know. But now that we no longer cared what our parents thought, their disappointment disowning us without a single raised voice, that duty had mellowed into something kinder. I saw Grace fall in love with my friends in that moment, and I fell for them too. How sweet and easy we were. How quickly we could take in a stray and turn her into a long-lost friend. Thank you. So next, please welcome Natalie Graham to the podium.
Whew.
Are y'all nervous? I'm nervous. Okay, that's good. Thank you so much for coming. It really is an honor to be here, to share the stage with such amazing writers and just wonderful people. This has been really sweet so far. I'm going to read some poems from my collection. It's called Begin with a Failed Body. And I'm going to start from the end. I end the collection with some poems kind of thinking about Ophelia and Beloved and Cinderella. And so that's kind of where I end, and I sort of want to start a new collection in that direction. So I'm going to start at the end. Ophelia by Water. Even with the buzz and prick of summer, what thumped in her brain was not the pulse of a dark thicket, the frenetic crescendo of cicadas, but snippets of verse that sounded sacred. She turned away from noise, cooling her hem in the current, washing a hand over her face. Lit from within, she was a candle to the cerulean shadows, perched on the edge of a black tangle of climbing vines. She waited, a doll, half wooden and half glass. Later, the sky would shiver under autumn's black hood, all pinpricked, iridescent, cold air floating in ghostly currents. Cinderella sends her godmother away. I will never leave this house. How I hated the company of women and called my sisters wicked when they tied down my restless hands with work, when they licked me with their curses. But keeper, all names are curses. You know how my body arches for the faithful, brutal touch of almost family, how the skin hollers to be rubbed quiet with hurting. Don't send your chariot. Let me slip back into muddy, dark, let midnight expose a dirt-born, square-toed monster from which all pure hands shrink back. I'm gonna accelerate the pace a little bit and go to a poem called Junior Choir Recessional, and it's really about sort of growing up in the Missionary Baptist Church, and doing a lot of singing there, and also finding the church in some ways a harbor, and in other ways sort of broken and terrible. Junior Choir Recessional. This is where you wait among the filthy hills of sinking graves and broken stones, sweating in a crimson polyester robe, where you wait for water to make you clean, wait for the hunger to come and pass, you ashy underneath, socks don't match, are dirty, same every Sunday dress don't fit, hills of graves, rumpled earth, black as a buzzard, marching in a half-heeled shoe bout broke, this old, dirty, bout broke shoe, and you marching. Steady marching. Sing now. Bread of heaven, feed me. Soul singing, lined with sweat, nothing to do but sweat, wait, soul singing, feed me, heaven bread. Lord, this soul gon' clap, this wing gon' flap, this broke black bird will wait. You gon' wait for him here, under the trees. He'll put a piece of candy in you, sweeten that mouth. Look, here's the church. Ain't no steeple. This is how you wait, baby bird. Mouth cracked for a worm. Bread of heaven, feed me till I want no more. The Way of the Shrine, after Juan Delgado. The imprint of his mother's body on the hospital bed is a doorway. So vivid, then gone, he says of her memory, of her forgetting, first being a teacher, then being, then gone, an imprint. He sees them everywhere. 2 tomato slices on the almost empty plate, wobbly highlighting in a book of Psalms, the places her hands might have been. He never said her body was a doorway. He said that shadow is an imprint of the body. I don't remember my mother polishing her nails, though I was old enough to make memories. Before the wake, my aunt says, make sure her lipstick is red. I think she liked pink. I recall the smell of her face powder. I think I saw one of her fake eyelashes on the dresser with the one door broken off, and wasn't the other door half hinged, and one of the drawers inside also broken, and the brown curtains never quite shut, and the light coming through them slanting through dust, and the walls stained. We become terrain. First a body, then a shrine, then a road marker, furnishing a crowded landscape. Okay, let's do Judas. Judas' kiss. Then Satan entered Judas, called Iscariot, one of the 12, and Judas went to the chief priests and the officials of the temple guard and discussed with them how he might betray Jesus. They were delighted and agreed to give him money. Luke 22, 3-5. Judas was a skeptic. Blood, bread, wine, everything tasted heavy. The Sanhedrin scanned the feathered scriptures. Jealousy fell on Judas like sawdust, burned his eyes, lined his tongue with wood. Don't take yourself so seriously, the officials said. Poverty lit on Judas's shoulder, its talons grazing the crease of his armpit. It licked the crest of his ear, singing songs to him that hadn't been written yet. One glad morning, when this life is over, I'll fly away. The Sanhedrin fingered its tassels. There's no escaping hunger. Judas swallowed hard. The moon touched him with light. Night poured from his mouth. The idea of order. When I read The Idea of Order at Key West, I thought first of the man who hacked off his own leg to keep from being sold there. In a certain backyard, his body still hangs, suspended by its canvas thumbs, chin cut off, ears missing, Raggedy Ann red yarn dragged out the cut throat, fingers shredded strips of a burgundy cable knit. Consider how much killing and what kinds of dying it will take. How must this potato sack of a man be beaten, and with what, before it is burned? We call this pyre a blessing. We say that we are safe. Now the twigs will not snap beneath us. Now our burlap scrap bodies, sewn together with mud, will not betray us. Now we bathe in the swampy light at dawn. We say the spirit will never dream its way back, will never catch us asleep. And I'll just read two more. This one is for my grandfather who raised, among other things, rabbits for animal testing. Raised for testing. Gray dirt snaked under a covering of trees. The descent felt steeper, turning off the last highway in town, how the path to the old house sunk down and dirt rose on both sides, cut with black roots. Every summer, our tan Jeep, down on a dirt snake, wound its way toward the old farmer, the icebox, the washboard, the outhouse, the tin tub, and the rabbits. Past the sagging house, through the gate, the yard opens to what should be wilderness, but is just more sky and the long rabbit house. The old farmer talks about cotton money, coal money, railroad money, and rabbit money. You only enjoy the dollar you spend, and the best dollars, rabbit dollars. The feed bag drags another snake behind us. In the rows of steel cages, hundreds of rabbits thump soundlessly, soundless except for the thumping, the rattling cages, the scratching, the cages not quite rattling, but quivering. If they hissed or squealed, I don't remember their rabbit noises, just their mouths quivering and their cages almost rattling and them thumping their jumpless limbs and the machine of cages quivering and scraping together. The last one I'll read is called Underneath There Is a Wound, and it's really about a mother trying to understand how someone could see her son as a monster, right? Sort of in response to so many really Black mothers whose sons have become like martyrs for justice, right? And the sort of impossibility of considering your son as a martyr, but also before that as a monster. Underneath, there is a wound. There's a man who writes poems about letters, or poems that are letters from soldiers, or who writes to the soldiers that die with blank faces. There's always another blank-faced boy to forget. Underneath this poem, and listening to the man read his poem, and forgetting, there's a wound, flapped open like a trout's mouth. Its tenderness surprises me. My boy is tender for dead things, whines for the gone life, lays a leaf over a cricket's carcass, talks breath back into things that never were. Seeing the socket where a fish's eye had been at the dinner table, the hole behind the eye, I forget the soldier who is not a metaphor for loss. The life behind the poem, the wound and blank, all of it. I fail to remember. I refuse to touch another mother's flickering body, even to warm mine. Another blank-faced boy dying, mouth open, still moving, his wasted body shuddering like a huddle of velvet ducklings. Thank you. You welcome up Jason Grote.
Thank you. I hope I can live up to that wonderful work. So it's really great. So this is going to be a selection from a new play called Desire Path. And a desire path is a term that urban planners have for those little shortcuts that we've all seen when people don't want to use the path that was created for them and instead kills the grass. And so this is a play about the impact that we have on each other and on other living things and on the biosphere, et cetera, just by existing. Scene 1, Lost in the Town Square. Irene, late 20s, early 30s, she breastfeeds a baby goat matter-of-factly. The goat is in a Moby wrap or other sarong-like thing. The goat doesn't need to be some sort of elaborate puppet. Its life comes from what the actors bestow, its weight, its movement, its needs. It should be clearly recognizable as a baby goat, but that's it. Similarly, it should be clear that Irene is breastfeeding the goat, but aside from that, the actor's modesty should rule the day. Irene, this city is desperately confounding, some would say by design, to repel invaders, maybe. Or maybe the paths laid by prehistoric animals were later paved with cobblestones, and then when some insurgent movement used the cobblestones as weapons, they became dirt again, then were paved with asphalt, and they tore up the asphalt and put the cobblestones back in for the tourists. I'm hopelessly lost, jet-lagged, and day-drunk, unable to discern even the family of the language everyone is speaking. It sounds like no human language at all, in fact, but like bells or birds or a truck rattling down a narrow road. At first, I want practical information like directions or where to find coffee or a toilet, but it doesn't take long for me to just want human contact of any kind. I hailed one of those taxi things like pedicabs, but these are more like houseboats on wheels, small trailers on the back of a sort of motorbike thing. You can live in them. One of them stops, I enter. The accommodations inside are nice, really lovely. There's a bidet and fresh towels. I'm enjoying the luxuriousness when I realize I never told the driver where I wanted to go. There was never any talk of price. I start to become alarmed. Maybe this isn't a ride. Maybe by getting inside of this thing, I agreed to live in it forever, always moving. I start to panic, gesturing wildly at the driver, but he can't let me off here. It isn't safe. Through the curtains of the little house, I can see that we're on some sort of monstrous freeway now, like a clover leaf or something. Except this is bigger, freeways layered on top of each other, more than seems prudent, actually, stretching into the heavens above the tops of the mountains. I look down and I can see the backs of birds in flight. The square where I'd hailed the cab is far beneath us now, in the shadow of the skyscrapers linked by strings of hanging clothes. I told the driver I want to get off in as many languages as I can muster, which is three and a half, really. The Russian was more like, get off me. It doesn't matter, though, because he doesn't speak any of them. He just looks at me evenly like he's wondering how this situation could get him in trouble. But he can see that I'm in a panic. He makes a gesture that I think is supposed to be reassuring and brings me to a place one would reasonably expect a tourist to want to go, a castle. I try to pay him, but I don't have the right kind of currency. He doesn't seem to care. After he drives off, I realize he must have taken my suitcase as payment. I consider running after him, then I realize I never had a suitcase. I slow down and walk inside the castle ground. The castle is like any other castle, the kind of place that some forgotten autocrat had built centuries ago so he can intimidate the peasants and misplace his family. I enter the castle, crossing some sort of empty moat that smells like cat litter. Inside, there's a bank of video gambling machines. An old woman excitedly pulls me over to one and tries to get me to play. I try to tell her I don't have the right money. She seems to be offering to pay for me. I stare at the machines, but I can't understand the principles of the game. It starts to dawn on me where I am. Someone on TripAdvisor posted that everyone in the castle district was a vampire. The post warned not to make too much noise or display too much emotion because that's how you become a target. But now I notice that the lady who's been trying to get me to play is eyeing me cannily. Maybe she's been seeing whether I get excited. I try to sneak a good look at her incisors, but have you ever tried to sneak a look at someone's incisors? The atmosphere is suddenly suffused with menace. I try to tiptoe out and for some reason take someone else's rolling suitcase. I walk past walls of merchants hawking ceramic saints and minions and Pokemon, and I'm blending in now. The streets are busier. There are tram tracks, which means a tram. And then I see him there on the sidewalk, bleating. Unnoticed in the rush of pedestrians, all of them stepping over the body of his dead mother. There are giant holes in her neck, her blood pooling in the street, a couple of footprints tracking goat blood all over the sidewalk. He was tiny, practically newborn, crying or braying, and it looked like he was starving, and I I don't know how, but I know that this is somehow my fault. That he has been abandoned here, that he is suffering, that everyone is indifferent. I can't take another step without... She looks down at the nursing goat. His name is Richard. Blackout. 2, in 9 days, spring. Lights up, gentrifying Brooklyn, a dive bar, but not a good one. Irene is still nursing the goat. She is with Brad. Brad's pants are always falling down a little bit, and he's usually showing some butt cleavage. This is going to indicate Irene, the little mimed goat. Thanks for meeting me here. It's fine. It's not always easy for me to find if it was just the breastfeeding, the standard single species kind, every place would have to allow it or they'd get hit with like a class action suit and like 10 million one-star Yelp reviews, but I like it here. Anyway, it's not always easy. They have a decent selection of beers. The jukebox is atrocious. They have Donnie Iris. I can't really sing. I hope you're okay with... you seem very cool with... I try to be frank with perspective. You get a certain kind of... I don't like to use the B word, bitch. Bestiality, but this is not that. It's not sexual. Okay. It's just an example of a form of nurture between creatures of different speciation. Sure. So it's totally normal, like having a pet. It's not at all like that. He's not a pet. I didn't mean it's... I don't think there's a name for it, but it's interesting. A radical form of empathy. The most radical I can think of. We're literally dying from our inability to empathize. Totally. But it's these fucking gadgets. Everything mediated through a platform that wants nothing else except for you to constantly engage with it. It's a closed system with nothing resembling human logic. Oh, well, the logic of the product. What do you mean? Consumerism, people starving, all the dumbest fucking, I don't know, Furbies. That's maybe not the best example. Elon Musk or, no purpose, but a kind of dumb narcotic, right? And the logic of these like platforms like Facebook or whatever, it's all about sorting you into demographics. This person is mad about oil pipelines. This person loves cop memes. It's like an infinite array of combinations, and before you know it, we all hate each other because we've all sorted ourselves into these warring tribes, and we've done it all for them so they can sell us, not like sell us a thing, but sell us to who or what, I have no fucking idea, but someone, Cambridge Analytica, right, or although, what? It was some algorithm that decided you, Brad, was okay with this, so... Well, sure, sometime. Not that I'm defending it. You don't have to defend anything, not the goat. The algorithm. I'm not defending the algorithm. Oh. But somewhere in the haystack of human existence, the machine sussed out that you'd be okay drinking watered-down Miller Lite with a woman who is suckling a goat more or less constantly. We don't have to. I don't mind talking about it, but yeah, you're not obligated to explain anything to me. I know. Good. I know that. Okay. So I guess, do you work? What do you think about it? Work? Richard. Who's Richard? She indicates the goat. I don't really know him. I like kids, get it? I've met a lot of guys who say they're okay with it, but either they just want me to put Richard down for 3 minutes so they can fuck me, or they want to fuck Richard. I would just like to get that conversation out of the way. 3 minutes? Does that seem long to you or short? Is he suckling all the time? He's a goat. They're hungry. Okay. I can put him down long enough to complete various tasks, including sexual intercourse. Don't get any ideas. Okay. Pause. Brad looks like he's afraid to say something. Just say whatever it is you're obviously thinking. It seems confrontational, whimsical, I guess. I don't mind it at all. I've got a couple bad tattoos. It's a radical gesture. The planet is dying. Okay, no, I agree. On that, we agree. Not just our species. To hell with our species. It seems like it was a mistake to take a bunch of territorial apes and give them mastery over whatever physics, chemistry. I'm saying this miraculous, beautiful place, this enormously unique and special thing, singular in the universe. That's what they think now. If there's any other intelligent life, it must be so far away, it might as well not even exist. And here we are teeming with trees and mushrooms and insects and weird squid, the universe looking back at itself, and we can't even muster the ability to care about a human child who happens to be black or brown, let alone the rest of the biosphere, let alone a goat. Which is that, so that is why I walk around with this baby animal hanging off my tit, even though it's way more of a commitment than I'd initially thought, even though it's giving me serious back problems, because we are determined to turn this unique and irreplaceable gem into fucking Venus, where the atmosphere is so hot and acidic, it vaporized a Russian spacecraft in like 20 minutes, and I will not accept that. I will not. Venera. Sorry? Venera. That was the name of the Russian spacecraft. I'm kind of a what? I'm not sure, actually. So as long as we're, I did have one question. How is it you're not arrested? Lactating. The story of how I'm not arrested is more interesting. Okay. It was in the New York Post. I know. You read the New York Post? No, it just kind of, it went around. I'm guessing you didn't read the second article. I won a $600,000 settlement against the NYPD and the city. Oh. I mean, after taxes and lawyer fees, it wasn't even enough for a down payment on a unit in a shitty building in Prospect Lefferts Gardens. Where do you, I live right around here, near the Franklin Avenue shuttle. That's not bad. There's lead paint. So do you live off it? The settlement? God, no, that's long gone. I freelance various things. You didn't answer my question about you seem awfully concerned with my biology. I'm asking because I want to know if you have children. Oh. I mean, it would be okay if you did. I don't. Do you want them? In this fucking world? Blackout. Thank you.